who would, some of the women might speak to me in we call them dorms then, the res halls, but they wouldn't speak to me walking across the campus. I had people when we went to the dining halls who would get up and walk away. They would get up even if they weren't finished eating. So I went through all of this kind of thing. But, because of my own interest and love of science and my parents' support and not wanting to let them down, I stayed focused on what I was doing. I had a professor, and I had actually gotten an A in his course. I had the highest GPA. And I was asked if I minded if the person who was next down from me also got an A. Being more charitable then, I said, of course not, I don't mind. But then, as we were moving along, there was one other African-American woman in the class, and he would call us Tweedledum and Tweedledee. And he told us that colored girls should learn a trade. But again, I'm a bit of a contrarian. So I decided I would learn a trade, and it would be physics. And I'm not saying that to say that it was easy, because I would get discouraged, and at one point I would spend as much time as I could away from the campus, while still getting my work done, because I found it depressing to be on the campus. But in the end, I've always been motivated by what I see as a higher purpose. And I did volunteer work at Boston City Hospital. And I worked in a an orthopedic ward, actually, for young people who had orthopedic problems, leukemia, and even deformities. And there was one kid there who was a little blonde kid, but he had a completely deformed face, and his parents never came to see him. So whenever I went, I would spend time and just hold him. And over time, you see, that actually caused me to kind of relax, in the sense that, one learns that life deals everybody a hand, and you've got to play through it. And sometimes the hand you're dealt is rooted in more systemic things, and it could be racism or sexism. And sometimes it could be more individual things, such as health and disabilities. But in the end, you have to decide if you feel that one is the fortunate one. I felt I had my health and I had capability. And I was at a great school, even if some of the people in it were not particularly friendly. And so I felt I was the fortunate one, and therefore I should do something with what I had been given, and that has motivated me my whole life.
Thanks for coming. Several million American workers have lost their jobs permanently in manufacturing here.
Yeah.
Have you been thinking about innovative ways to retrain these workers?
Yeah, I spoke, as you may recall, in my remarks about the fact that we need to think about ways to provide portability of retraining, but also through not just create training programs, but perhaps through community colleges and other means to create a continual learning stream. Because what is clear is that in the end, what's going to power our economy is not manufacturing that necessarily looks like manufacturing of old, and that's why I spoke specifically about so-called advanced manufacturing involving new processes, involving biomimetic processing and biomimetic materials, new types of technologies, and workers have to be trained and educated to work in those arenas, but they're going to continue to morph. And so we've got to kind of create a parallelism, even as we work to bring today's workers up to begin to work in some of these areas. We've got to have a parallelism that keeps them on a continuing learning curve. I mean, we've been fortunate in many ways coming out of World War II that people could stop with a high school education, get a good job in a factory, and work there for the balance of their working lives. That's not going to be so much the case anymore, and because the world is changing. And so we're in much more of a global competition. And in order for us to meet that competition, our workers are going to have to continue to evolve, even if they don't become the engineers and scientists or the Ph.D.s or master's degree people. Having said that as well, we have to think about what's going to be the basis of the economy. What will the new manufacturing look like? And that's going to be harder, because that's going to take having leaders both in government and industry and universities, having a more longer range outlook, and being unafraid to make the investments today, to promulgate the policies today that are going to be the basis of the long-term creation of new enterprise. And new enterprise has two meanings. It means new enterprise literally, which may be startups and so on, and I spoke about some of that in my remarks, but it means recreation of existing enterprise as well. And so this, again, is another kind of parallelism, that even as we're educating workers to work in more high-tech, new, advanced manufacturing, we've got to build that manufacturing and sustain it. So these are some of my thoughts, and I'll be happy to talk with you afterwards about some specific programs. I talked about shared infrastructure, for example, because when you look at things like nanotechnology, you look at things in certain other areas, you know, there are companies that may want to retool and evolve, but they can't afford to just do all these things and have all these capabilities in this infrastructure themselves. And there are new ones that are springing up. And so we've got to think about new ways to, you know, allow them to grow and scale. So these are things I've been thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, I'm done.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to a Friday Forum featuring Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson, president of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.